Welcome everyone. This is EIPIP meeting 18 and I'm sharing agenda in chat. So the first topic for today's discussion is EIP standardization process, PR to EIP1 and network upgrade process. So this PR is created by James. Anyone has any update on that? Like I have also added some comments. I see Lightline and Micah also have added there. So James, would you like to take over and let us know more about it?
It's there. I don't know what the next steps are. I responded to most of them. I guess I haven't in the last couple of days looked, so there might be ones that I haven't responded to. If there's comments or stuff you all have about it, I'd be happy to discuss.
I think the next step is to merge.
Okay, so there is just one last comment I added to the pull request there in one of the I just have requested to remove the word accepted there. I think would be visible in the comment section. I'm not sure if that is appropriate or not, but if it is, like that after that. And another thing that I wanted to discuss was on the part of the living status. So for living status, I see some communication on the arrow should be one-sided or two-sided and the status. So I was wondering like what would be the, ideal situation to consider it, because EIP1 is going to be under review all the time, but changing the status, is it something that is feasible and should be considered, or the status should be living, but we will be considering the changes? What is general thought over here?
My thoughts for that was that for EIP1, going back to draft doesn't make going back to review doesn't make sense, because then we have EIP1 no longer active looking, which is kind of strange. But I didn't feel too strongly about having the both arrows be possible, because I don't think that, because if EIP1 can't go back to EIP1 should just stay, and then we should find some way. I guess I'll start with the intention of why I had the arrows back and forth, because I'd like for some way for people to subscribe to changes that are happening to living EIPs. So there are people that are going to want to know what's happening to EIP1 and aren't going to care about what's happening to many other EIPs, or just leaving EIPs in general. So currently we have an RSS feed for last call, but it would be great to have an RSS feed for all EIPs. So whenever there's a change in state, people can subscribe to that state.
Are people using the RSS feed?
Yes.
How many people are using the RSS feed?
I do not know. I think you can get that from the EIP repo, but you have to be have permissions to see it.
I think the answer is like 1 or 2.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot of work to improve the experience for 1 or 2 people who are using this. I feel like there are better avenues to alert people of changes of EIPs. I'm not sure optimizing for RSS is the best avenue for that.
Well, with an RSS feed, it'd be easy to put a bot for like a Twitter bot or other things. And it's fairly actually easy to implement with GitHub to have the RSS feed be a thing. We just haven't had someone do it. So yeah, maybe it's not an RSS feed, that's also fine. I do think we should have some way of people being able to subscribe or see that these changes are happening, because
Agreed.
people are gonna care about what's happening to EIP1, and they shouldn't have to go and look at EIP1 every week just to see if something's changed. and look through all the different PRs and make sure like that we should make that fairly easy and transparent that stuff is happening there. So whether it's RSS feed or some other way, that's fine. When I had thought about the going back between review and active, it was if it changed state, then the RSS feed would show that. But that's an optimization in, it's like relying on a weird part of the process, like a nuance of whatever to achieve a goal rather than just have the goal and then achieve it the best way possible. Which that was brought up by I think Micah on the PR. So I agree with that that there's probably better ways to do that. And in the case for EIP1, moving it into review would make it look like it's no longer active. And so that would kind of be strange that there would be no appearance of no EIP1 active at a time. And so it should stay. But as far as if there are living EIPs that want to go back and forth, I haven't thought about it enough to really say that they should or shouldn't. And then that's kind of where I got. I didn't feel too strongly we needed to force that there is only one state change here, given that we just don't know a lot about living EIPs and something that we can figure out as we go along down the road.
So considering if we have EIP1 only for now, like as we have only one, do we consider the change of a state, or we just agree that it has to be living only and we will be doing the reviews? Because as you mentioned, if we change the status, people will have some kind of confusion.
Yeah, so for EIP1, we shouldn't change the status to review. But I don't know if that means we shouldn't have an arrow. Because so before we were going to have meta EIPs that were in a living state, but a lot of those meta EIPs, the registry ones, are kind of moving into the ETH1 specifications repo. So I don't know if there will be another living EIP out of the meta ones that exist.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I would rather see living EIPs be documented in another way. Like obviously EIP1 is special and it's unlikely that we can change that. But I think that generally when we run into a time where we want to continue updating EIP, it would make more sense to do those updates out of band and maybe define the process for updating and where those updates happen as an EIP. And that can be static. The network upgrades is obviously a good example of that.
Do we have any ideas of what else besides EIP1 makes sense as living in the EIP's repo? Especially now that we've split out the network upgrade stuff.
I haven't really deep dove into it since we have done the splitting most things into network upgrades.
My tentative feelings on the matter is until we have a second example of a living EIP, we don't spend too much time worrying about what the process for EIP1 is, since it will only affect EIP1, which only affects like the people in this channel right now. As far as I can tell, no users actually read that.
Yeah, like that. So I mean, I'm also in favor of having it for EIP1 at this point of time, because we cannot foresee what is coming up for any other future living document. But if it will, then maybe considering the status change would matter. Okay, so talking about the process part, the second part of the first item is the network upgrade process. James has
let's actually just have a decision on that. Is it okay just to leave it as arrow goes both ways and we don't really take time to figure out the nuances until there's a reason to? Or do we have the arrow be one way and figure it out?
all I care about is I don't want to see the status of EIP1 go back to not active or living or whatever it is.
Yeah.
As long as that's met, I don't care what the graphics looks like or anything, since it's just EIP1 and there's like 6 people that need to care about the status of EIP1 and its flow through the process. So I'm not too worried about being super formal about it.
So, I mean, it's my personal opinion here, because we are talking about standardization process, and every time the arrow way points, it states that the proposal in that category is going to change the status. So let's have the arrow one way, but while documenting what living document is, we can mention it clearly that it is a living document. It will be under review all the time, but the status is going to be living. Is it something that is considerable?
Just seems okay. It seems like we don't really need to necessarily limit it. Like the arrow in the document literally just is on the diagram.
Right.
So I can change that, and then if someone wants some way to do that later, they'll just have to make an EIP to make it so it can be possible to go to review again.
Sounds good. Anyone has any objection to this, or before we move further?
Just real quick, earlier, James, you indicated that the reason you wanted the arrow to go the direction was so people could get notified. Do you have an idea of who the people that might want to be notified on EIP1 changes are, besides the 6 of us that actually care?
There is, for EIP1, there is a lot. Like, for example, the change that accepted is no longer a status is pretty huge to the community. And as far as, so in the day-to-day stuff, there are people who are working on EIPs, and that's kind of a small group of people. And then there's us who work on the process of EIPs, which is even a smaller group of people. But as far as the definition for how standards work, who are the EIP editors, what how the EIP repo works, and those things, there are a lot of people who care a lot about it. They just don't know, they don't look at it very much, and changes to those things are quite big. It's sort of like changing the it'll be easier post this, so perhaps it's less of a thing moving forward, but previously it was basically the constitution of how to do Ethereum stuff. And yeah, a lot of people are very, like, thinking back to some of they don't care about it until suddenly everybody does, and changes to it can have pretty far reaching effects. A good example is the splitting of the network upgrade process and the standardization process actually has pretty big far reaching effects for the community and decision makers within them. So I think more people would care about EIP1 than any other EIP in the EIP repo.
So I suspect that all those people are not subscribed to the RSS feed. Do we know how to reach those people? Like, is the best mechanism to just tweet, or is like their Reddit, or like what is the means of actually getting in touch with all these stakeholders?
If there was an RSS feed, if there was a Twitter account that tweeted the RSS feed, that would be the easiest way to get that information to the people who care about it, because then they could just subscribe either through the RSS feed or through Twitter.
Given that this is just EIP1, and the changes to it are pretty infrequent, I wonder if we can just avoid the automation for now and just have someone here tweet major updates on some well-defined account, like @EIP.
Yeah, I think that is a good idea since this EIP group is working on the process improvement part and looking into it. So one of the EIP group member can do that, or maybe from the cat herders official account, if people would want, we can go ahead and do that because we do not have any official Twitter for EIP. So we can do that if that's okay with everyone here.
Yep, like an EIP updates. That'd be a
Right.
nice Twitter account to have for people to follow.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, like most of the EIPs would be under the process of either standardization or maybe for the network upgrade. I'm not sure if any of the EIP editor would like to volunteer to handle that Twitter account separately, or is it something that anyone from the group is interested to do that? Because I'm not sure cat herders would be, qualified to handle that EIP's Twitter, or maybe, they are not part of, some of them, of course they are, but most of them are not editors. So not sure if how people are gonna perceive it.
I mean, I can just start tweeting them for now until we figure out if there's a better way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with that because you being hardware coordinator, if you start tweeting about EIPs and especially EIPs which are related to network upgrade, it's fine. Any other thought on that?
Excuse me, would that be something that would make sense to have the cat herders own that and use the cat herders email as the owner of that?
It would. Cat herders could certainly own it, and then figure out. We have either they or whoever they want to consult with to help figure out what should be tweeted. I don't know if it should come from the cat herders account because people don't know that cat herders are EIP updates.
Makes sense.
So it may make sense to have its own venue so people know what they're subscribing for. Oh, EIP bot's available. Yeah, you should just get that light client and then let's use it. And then we can coordinate EIPs from it. I'm doing tweets from it. And with cat herders and light client, perhaps you can help too.
Right.
Cool.
So we can take, we can like note it down as an action item for us today. Like we would be creating a Twitter account for tweeting about EIP status update, and the cat herders, the hardware coordinator, and light client, Matt, all of us will be working together to start tweeting about it.
Yep.
Great. Moving on, the next part was network upgrade process flow. See, the process that we have been discussing, I have tried to document it in that I and James tried to, work together and document it in a proposal. But the confusion part was, should this proposal be a part of EIP or not in itself? Like I had some comments there. Going by the current process, I personally feel that it should be a part of Meta EIP where we are mentioning the process for network upgrade process. But I would like to hear other thoughts on it.
Broken record, Micah thinks that the EIP should only be technical standards. I'm pretty sure you guys all know my feelings on that at this point, so I won't go into details unless someone wants to hear them again.
Right about that, I mean, if people are comfortable, I'm going to put that as a specific agenda item in the next meeting about should the Meta and information EIP not part of the EIP at all, because they are clearly defined. They are processed, and that is processed around the Ethereum, but that is not bringing any change to the network itself. So I find that if people are looking for only technical specification, we have a special category of that, a standard track EIP. So we can look into that. And I was also looking into the numbers of informational and meta EIP so far. I think we have like very few, under 10 for information as well as for meta. For meta, so far we have only the number of upgrades are the number of metas, because whatever is going into upgrade, we are just listing all those proposals into one bucket and we name them as meta up till now. Because for process we have EIP1. Now we are separating the process of standardization as well as for networks. So I'm proposing to have another meta one there, another meta proposal for documenting the process. I don't think it's a like, you know, creating a lot of confusion, because for technical specification we have a clear category.
So from the context of metas have a clear category and technical specifications have their own clear category, there is like that those buckets exist within EIPs makes sense. What I'd like to avoid is if we have the process for network upgrade processes being within an EIP, then we once again have EIP editors in the politics of what goes into the upgrade process.
I'm not so sure of that, because if we look into the process, it just tells, okay, fine. The reason behind having it in an EIP in the first place, my argument was, whenever we change the process, we don't want to go back and change the EIP one every time. It's just changing one EIP. Say for example.
Yeah, so I would say we don't even need it in EIP1.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
And we don't need it in the meta EIP either. We just have it in the network upgrade. We have this information in the ETH1 specs repo.
Yes, of course. So the point was like when we are trying to reach to the ETH1 spec repo, and the README file there, that is limited to this particular repository only. But when we put something on the EIP repo, I mean like eips.ethereum.org, then it is accessible to everybody. But I do not want to to have super strong opinion on it. But yeah,
If the concern is that so it doesn't, we can make a file like a hackmd file for the process, like literally just take this meta EIP and put it on the specs repo.
makes sense.
But remove the stuff, the EIP specific formatting and information, and just put it there and make it so it fits in its own file underneath network upgrade specification. As far as formatting and fitting and everything, if the concern is how do we make this visible because there isn't a website that shows the information, then we should figure that out separately and not use that. It's convenient that EIPs are shown on eips.org, so we could plug into that system by having the network upgrade system use it. It's a little bit of a using what we currently have to do something that we should just do better anyway on its own. And then we're not again tying the processes together, even indirectly. If someone goes to an EIP and then reads about the network upgrade process, they're getting tied, like the worlds are once again coming together into one place, because edits to the process become an edit to an EIP, which then becomes an edit in the EIP repo, which then becomes the domain of EIP editors, and then also the people that are there working on it. And that's pulling things together more than I think is appropriate. And any information about network upgrades should exist on the network upgrade spec repo. Like that's the purpose, is to hold the information and the process, the current process, and the definition of the process in one place, and have it be in its own world. And if visibility of that is an issue, we should then solve that.
So yeah, any other
Or
thought on
we
that?
can make a website that is network upgrades, Ethereum network upgrades, and then put the information there.
If we have one such website, I think the bot thing that we are talking about would also make sense to have it there. I mean, the Twitter bot.
Well, the Twitter bot should be for EIPs, but having a Twitter bot for network upgrades also would be nice. But really, that's just me.
You were just a Twitter bot, very advanced.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm just a Twitter bot at this point. My rules have been defined. I just execute them.
Great.
I know the feeling.
Okay. So I'm gonna leave it just like that. And if it has to be converted into a hackmd file, I'm okay to do that. But again, as I mentioned, my concern would be like what would be going into meta and informational. But let's keep it for some other discussion, some other time.
Yeah, for the general conversation of meta, of should we have meta and should we have informational is separate. But I do think anything about network upgrades shouldn't be on the EIP repo. It should be in the network upgrade specification.
So one more thing before we move on from this, the other day we were talking about different phases of a network upgrade process. So would you like to, reiterate on that? Or, I mean, I can share the screen if you want.
Is it something the group wants to go through right now?
There was one concern which I think should be brought into the consideration for EIP editors. It was about the EIP status. The network upgrade process is divided into 3 phases, and I was looking into EIP statuses. What I have seen historically is even if an EIP is deployed on the mainnet, the status does not change to change from draft to any other. Sometimes it happens. So I was looking to enforce that,
Yeah, I have strong feelings about this. The people are very often create an EIP and as a draft and then think they're done and they just walk away. And then hundreds of other people think that, oh, this is an EIP, I should go implement this, and they go implement it. This is not just for core EIPs. This happens to ERCs and basically all of them, and which is why we have 3,000 drafts and 10 final EIPs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't know how to solve this, but it would be great if we could at least get the core developers to not implement or not put things on the mainnet until they're final, especially with this new process. Like an EIP should be final before it touches mainnet, in my opinion. Or rather, mainnet should not be putting non-final standards onto mainnet. I guess is a better way to put it.
Right. So that is what I wanted to specify here. Like when we are changing the category of CFI, like CFI applied, CFI approved, CI testnet, devnet waiting room. Whenever we are changing the statuses, changing the bucket for any of the proposal, we should also consider the status at that point, meaning whenever a proposal is getting in the bucket of CFI applied, they can be in draft status. And when it changes from CFI applied to approved, the status must be between review to final. Okay, I'm just quickly gonna share this screen so it will be.
Share the screen so people can see. And my I also agree with Micah that an EIP shouldn't be on mainnet without being final.
Right. That's what.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. The nuance that I kind of want to address is who enforces it and how do we enforce it in a way that EIP and the network upgrade process isn't getting tied again. So the people deciding what, yeah.
Ideally, we can work with the core devs since it's a relatively small group of people and we can hopefully convince them that this is for the betterment of the ecosystem as a whole if they would stop putting drafts onto mainnet. I mean, really all it takes is just someone sitting down and saying, submitting a PR that moves it to final or last call and then final. Like the champion just needs to do those extra steps. I think for most cases, it's just a matter of no one is doing those steps. So my hope would be that we can just simply talk to the core devs and convince them that, hey, it would really help everything if you guys would set a good example here. And when you're ready to put something on mainnet, take those steps. Have whoever the champion is, do the 3 things they need to do in order to get it onto mainnet.
Yeah, and then
I hope we can avoid anything too formal or like official, just because we're working with a small group.
Yeah, that would be nice, and I would like the decision to be in the hands of the core devs or the people doing the network upgrade stuff.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want
100%.
the decision to be on EIP editors to like enforce that, or even make
Yeah,
it
I agree.
even have to do something.
Yeah, as I said before, I think the direction of the arrow should be network upgrade points at EIPs. EIPs effectively don't know that network upgrade process exists. Like from a programming standpoint, it would be, I have a pointer from network upgrades to the EIPs repo. The EIPs repo does not have a pointer back to network upgrades. So.
Yep.
Okay. Is my screen visible now?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm generally okay with what you have there, Pooja. Again, as an editor, I don't actually know this exists, but as a user of Ethereum, I think those are fine.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, as we were mentioning right now, like we would want to enforce this. We would like this, like people to adopt it and make sure that every author has requested.
What we had said earlier is we don't want to enforce it from the EIP side.
From the network upgrade side, I understand, but I think since we are defining everything, okay, you want it to be added as a recommendation?
Who is the network upgrade group? Is there a similar network upgrade group like this one?
Not really. I think James Hancock is the
Pretty much just me.
James is the group.
yeah, he's the group. Yeah, right.
So James, the editors would like it if you enforce this over on your side.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It should be I like that it exists as a rule, but I think the enforcement shouldn't exist on the EIP editors or even defined in the EIP side. It should be in the specifications for the repo and up to the authors and the people like me to make sure that it's enforced. So I don't want to, if it's tempting to make a official EIP standard that only EIPs that are final go into mainnet and have that exist on the EIP repo, because that would be a sort of easy way to enforce this. But it would put the hands of the decision into the EIP editor's hands and the EIP meeting people, or in general, the EIP stuff. Like the decision is no longer is on the other side of the fence. And we want to make sure that decision is on the network upgrade side of the fence and it stays over there. And so far, because it's just me and then the core devs, it's easy for me just to tell them, hey, this EIP needs to be final before we're moving it into mainnet. And they say, okay.
Cool. In that case, at least we agree to document it. And we'll see in the process how it turns out to be like.
Yeah, it can be documented in the network upgrade stuff. And I really just want to be very, very careful about stuff, about when we decide that something should be done, we should also decide who is it that enforces who is it that enforces those decisions, and does it fit with the paradigm that we're moving forward with.
A middle way here, I mean, it's again a suggestion. Like for network upgrade process, most of the time cat herders are helping with some or the other activities, reaching out to author for some or the other task. So if it is appropriate and if it can be considered under the boundaries of cat herders, we can certainly reach out to the authors requesting to change their status, citing this document that this is the new process. We are trying to follow the process, and according to this process, you are supposed to do that. Neither we are enforcing, we are just passing information for first few upgrades, and then maybe eventually people will be in a practice of doing it. So that might help in long run.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be happy to reach out to the proposal and the EIP authors, which is considered for this particular upgrade, and we'll let them know. But before that, we have to have it documented in a like in the network upgrade repository or somewhere else, wherever HackMD or repository, it's fine. One thing before we move on, I wanted to clarify here the proposals which gets into this process, but they are not moving forward. For example, there was EIP 2046, which is listed as CI DevNet waiting room. My fear and understanding is that may not go ahead. How we are going to, take out those kind of proposal out of this system? Should we have a bucket of rejected, rejected, withdrawn, or what?
You have a link to, what did you say, 2046?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
So I was looking for that specific bucket because that was there in the earlier process when we had network upgrade and EIP standardization together. We had this bucket of rejected EIPs, and that we took off from the standardization, citing that it would be a part of network upgrade. But we don't see it anywhere here. But we certainly need that. I mean, in the standardization process, we have
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we certainly, so at some point we probably need it. Today, I don't think we need it. I don't, there, even the EIP you mentioned, we had kind of talked a bit about this last week,
Mhm.
that like the philosophy I've had when designing the system is that sure, there are many more things to be added or things that could be added, but I want to add them as they come up. So we have a sense of emergent properties that are around the system. We're kind of building a system that's never really existed before. There isn't really a playbook on how to upgrade a multi-thousand distributed network of computers with lots of different parties, and somehow there isn't like a project management book that describes how well to do this. So because we're working into new territory, I want to avoid deciding in advance how things should be and then shaping them to that shape. And instead, as we move forward, see the shapes that appear and have the process fit to it. So the CFI and the DevNets and all those things are examples of stuff that arose organically as we were moving forward as the natural next step in this process. If in the beginning I sat down and wrote out a network upgrade process, it wouldn't be what this is today. It would have been something else based on my imagination of how things should go, based on who knows what, because there isn't anything really to piggyback off. So at some point there will be a need to have a rejection bucket, but I would not want to define what it is or how it gets there until we have an EIP that needs to have it happen.
Sounds brilliant.
Cool. Okay.
And the EIP you mentioned, it is waiting. It is technically, quote unquote, is superseded by another one going into mainnet, because if that goes in, then we don't need to have that one. But at this state, the the EIP that would supersede it also isn't in mainnet. So it hasn't kicked the other one out of the process, because technically at this point, the other one could not, that we could switch our decision and have it so the one that's waiting back, 2089, I don't remember the numbers, but the gas change cost for that EIP, we could change our mind and do that one instead, and then the other one would be rejected, or whatever it happens. So because there hasn't been a decision that kicks it out, I don't think we should build the process for kicking it out yet. It's fine just to sit in the waiting room or as EFI.
So yeah, I mean, that's fine. We will come with more buckets, as you mentioned, that for rejection, for superseding, we'll look into it. And I'm fine with that. Before we move on, there's, thanks to Light Client, we have secured a Twitter for EIP info, Twitter at EIP info, that we would be using for status change of EIPs.
Cool.
Okay. So the next item is discussion issues of final EIP. I think this was mentioned by Micah about a particular EIP, which they have created an issue, but after the EIP went into final, they closed it. And yeah, Micah, if you have.
Yeah, so we encourage people to use either GitHub issues or Ethereum Magicians for discussion tool links on EIPs. The question is just, should those remain open and active forever? With Ethereum Magicians, it doesn't really matter too much. They kind of just disappear over time, just how forums work. With GitHub issues, though, we have a ever-growing list of open issues. That doesn't really hurt anything per se. It just means search results become harder and harder to get useful results out of. Someone came along and said, oh, the EIP is final, so it makes sense to close the discussion link. And that got me thinking. Historically, we have not done that. And so I reopened the issue just because that is not our general process. But it did get me thinking, is that a good process? Should we do that? Should we, does it make sense to continue discussion on an EIP that's already been marked as final and the author is now long gone? You can't change it.
If it's so, the discussion to was an issue, and then it being closed.
Yeah, it was a GitHub issue, and so the author came by and closed the GitHub issue. And again, like I said, I reopened it because we normally don't do that, but it was a very reasonable thing to do, and I'm wondering, do we want to do that?
Can someone, that doesn't remove an issue, it doesn't delete it. It's still there, just not
Correct.
open. So someone could always go back and say, hey, we should talk about this again.
Yeah, it just basically removes it from the open list, and it means when you search, it's a little easier to find things because you can filter out closed.
Yeah, and
it's pretty minor either way.
Would the link still exists? If they clicked on the discussion to link, it would take them to the discussion, and it would show they could read through it all and then see that it's closed, but then still see it all.
Yeah.
In my mind, we should we should encourage people to go ahead and do that with the Magician only, because the example that you have cited, I see that is a recent proposal that was created. But I think if people have done it, if a PR is open for a very long time, the EIP is in process for a very long time, understand the issue of having it discussion 2 section in the issue, but from here on, we should try and encourage people to get it in at Magician. And I think it totally makes sense that we should close it. We want to have least number of open issues so that it can be addressed and finally closed.
I agree.
Believe the original reason. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, I agree. Closing it makes sense. Letting them close the issue, and then as long as it's findable still by the link and the content isn't gone, then it can be reopened if whatever happens. Okay. And I feel less strongly about enforcing it being on either one. I think it should be up to authors, but closing it makes sense.
I think the context for why we still allow people to do GitHub issues is because the ETH Magicians does require a second account. And we want to enable people to only need a GitHub account to participate in the EIP process and not have to go create accounts everywhere, especially since, ETH Magicians, I think, requires an email address. I don't know if GitHub does or not. But if you're trying to remain anonymous, which we want to encourage, it's easier the fewer accounts you have to go create at random places. I believe that was the original intent with still allowing GitHub issues.
I think with the pull request itself, they are getting a place, like in the EIP report, to discuss that proposal.
We have a rule that says you cannot use that currently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like it has to be an ETH Magicians or GitHub issue.
Yeah, I mean, I also find ETH Magician to be the best place because that was originally created to discuss all kind of proposals. So it's
I agree.
It's certainly the best place. I don't feel like we should limit authors to only do that. That saying that we can do EIP. I guess we're kind of getting on a tangent here, as far as should the issue be closed or not. Can we get a like?
Sounds like we're in agreement to close. I'm good with that.
Yeah. So then we're okay with closing final EIPs, and then does anyone else have thoughts on that so we can make that a decision?
Sounds like we have a decision.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So that one we can record.
Okay.
That that final EIPs can close their issues if they mark the discussion 2 as an issue. And then whether or not we allow. So then the next part of the conversation started into should we enforce only one or the other or not or the other, so we can get back into that if we'd like.
Yeah, sure. So moving on, the next item is EIP number squatting. So this was brought into attention by Micah. And we see a lot of
Alex has brought this to attention before too. I want to bring that up too.
I wasn't aware. I just read Micah's comment. So
like months ago, Alex has brought this up as well.
Okay. So what is general thought here? Like, Micah, if you would like to explain the situation and the point.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the situation is the EIP numbers are, people know how the editors choose numbers. Technically, the editors choose whatever number they want and they assign it. But people have figured out our secret formula, which is to just use the PR number. And so when they want to have a particularly cool number, like 3000 or 2000 or 1337 or 777 or whatever it is, they have learned to do one of two things. Either just set up a bot or something and wait for an EIP number to be next, and then immediately go create an EIP. Or worse, they come in and just create a bunch of trash issues just to force the number up until it gets to the one they want, and then they squat on that one. I think in the past we have kind of tentatively tried to frown on this, but we haven't actively done anything to stop it. The question here is, we have a situation where someone is doing exactly this. They saw that 3000 was coming up and they waited until 2999 was used, and then a few minutes later they created an EIP, which of course got them 3000. Or at least their PR number was 3000. As editors, we have the authority to just simply give them a different number if we want, since the process is editor will assign you a number. And so the question is, should we exercise that power and give them some other number, or should we allow them to have successfully squatted? My personal feelings is if we allow them to squat, it encourages people to do the same thing in the future, and it just kind of it's one of those things where the situation can escalate, and I would rather nip it in the bud and just say, hey, if we even think you're trying to squat, we're going to give you a different number that you don't like.
I think this is something that most of the editors can answer. But if I have to go by my personal opinion, since we have not done that in past, we could let it go for one time, making it, as a note, and then highlighting this issue to be in future to be, lesson learned kind of stuff. And if something is there, we are going to be more strict about it. But that's my personal, and I'm not editor.
I believe there was one situation in the past where we actually didn't allow the squatting. In this particular situation, if I remember correctly, it was a while ago. Someone was actually like creating a bunch of issues to bump the number up, and then we closed their PR on them once they got to the number they wanted. We said no. That was a little more aggressive this time around. It's a little more passive, and so I don't know if we want to be as harsh. But we do have, I think we have at least one instance of precedent of shutting down squatting. I don't know if that's enough to do it again, but
Yeah. If someone just waits for a number and then has an EIP and they write it. So in this case, did they just get the PR and then write the EIP later?
yeah,
Or
so
did
they
they
grabbed the number and it was TBD on every section. They had a title, I think, and that was it, if I remember correctly. I don't know if they might have updated it by now, but at least
Okay.
I'll check. But at the time, they had a title and the front matter, and that was it. Like they had no content yet, and they're like, "Oh, we have a plan." I actually
Okay.
still there. So yeah, they have title, author, discussion 2, which is actually wrong. It's the discussion 2 is currently the pull request, so I'll feedback that if we keep it open, and then TBD for everything else.
Yeah, in that case, I would say if someone had an EAP and they waited and then they I guess the appropriate cases, if someone wants a number and they write an EIP and it has content and then they just wait and then they do it, cool, good on them. But if they do this where it's literally just they have the least amount of work possible to keep the number, then I would agree with just saying sorry, you don't get it.
Well, it looks like they've got a project with some code and contracts and reference implementation. So it looks like they're progressing towards like writing it as a spec. I mean, my feeling is that the editor should come in and say, hey, we have complete control over the numbers. And so you did this, but that doesn't necessarily mean in the future people are going to get this. But I mean, this is Aragon. This isn't like some random, group that has some random EIP. I think like of all people to get the 3,000 EIP, this is like not the worst. I don't know. I don't really think it's that big of a problem. If it becomes a problem, then the editors can start assigning numbers, but no one's upset about this.
If they made a bunch of issues, which has happened a couple times, and then to get to the right number, then for sure I think that's far enough that we say sorry. You just bloated the EIP number issues for no reason, so you're not going to get what you wanted. In this case, it's kind of less clear to me that they're if they went like a week and nothing had happened, then it would be more feel like squatting versus just developing. I don't know.
I'm not sure if they have bumped the number. It's just that like after the last 10 minutes after that, this PR was opened, and they have also populated it with codes now.
Yeah, it looks like they like legitimately pulled it at 3,000 because the one before it, 29.99 legit.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe them in this case that they really did just wait. I'm guessing they set up like a GitHub bot to watch, and then they just pinged somebody when 2,999 showed up, and then then a human came along and just clicked new PR, copied the template, deleted the comments, hit submit. Hence why it took 10 minutes. So I don't think they were doing the malicious bumping, and so maybe it sounds like the general feeling is that if we believe you are causing problems like generating garbage PRs or issues, then we will stop you. If you, on the other hand, just wait and you fight with other people for that number and you win, then we let you have it. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that can be recorded as well. Like for future reference.
Okay. I don't know if we want to make this an official policy. I would still like to retain the power to deny numbers in the future
Yeah,
if
I agree with
for any
that.
reason.
I also agree.
But unofficial policy, I'm okay with that
No,
being kind of operating procedure for us internally.
right, it would be helpful for us to, cite some example if we are talking to somebody, some author. It would be helpful for us to cite some example mentioning that this is something not acceptable if such scenario comes in future. But definitely this is under the purview of editors. So I'm not sure if that can be a policy. Just for reference point, I was mentioning.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm good with this ruling. Just wanted to bring it up, talk about it. I'm satisfied.
Okay. Anyone has any more comment on it? Do we?
Just out of curiosity, since we're already talking about it, and hopefully, so I don't have to bring this up again, do we have a feeling like if they never actually fill in that EIP, will there be a point in time where we say, okay, yeah, this is not okay, or we just let them have 3,000 forever?
Yes, if they didn't
Because it looks like they
if they didn't within a couple days start doing something with it, then it was we just placeholded it to come back to in 4 weeks or something, then that's also kind of an appropriate time to tell them, sorry, you don't get that number. You clearly waited 6 weeks to do this.
That is currently the situation. It's been about a week and the EIP is still just empty. So the question is how long do we wait before we take away this number from them if we want to do that? Or do we just say, take your time. If you want to come back in a year and get ERC 3,000, go for it.
I mean, I think a year is like too long, but I think like 3 months. Like if they don't have an EIP to publish in 3 months, then that's that's a little bit egregious.
No,
Okay.
3 months is even too long. It doesn't need to be an EIP. Like it could be all they need is a simple summary and like the abstract and the motivation.
I mean, they have done quite a bit of work. Like they've registered all these sites around this EIP number, and they've already come up with some implementation of their EIP. So I think they just need to, if that's the minimum, we should let them know, because I think they'll do it. They have all this information. They're like obviously continue to progress on it. It's not a case where somebody decide they want EIP 3,000 and then they just like fall off the map. I think that this is like definitely going to happen with like very little chance it doesn't.
And if they don't do it within that time frame, anyway, it is going to be stagnant by the bot itself.
Yeah, but if thinking about it, just the general case, if it's 2 to 3 weeks and nothing's happened with the EIP, then they didn't have content when they made the like the ideal case is someone sits down, they write some stuff. Doesn't need to be everything, but they at least have some of the basic things, and then they hit submit an issue, and then boom, they make a PR. The PR gives them an issue, and then that's their number. So if they I can certainly, they have the standard and all that stuff kind of already, it seems like, written out or developed. But in the case of that, they made the number and then came back 3 weeks later to write those things. That's gets further and further from what we want, which is just people to make PRs when they have something to PR. So we should tell them, hey, put stuff in, or we're going to give you a new number.
Okay,
Yeah,
I can update the PR with that.
Yeah, and the new number probably should be the most recent issue number available, kind of a thing.
Sure, we can do that. We also have a bunch of numbers that were never used, like when you get those spammers that come on and create issues in your repo, then we immediately delete the issue. Those numbers could be reused if you want.
Yeah.
Like getting numbers is easy. We got lots of extras.
So we are out of time here, but I think we made good progress here. I mean, we have few decisions on the topics. There is a triaging permission. If you have anything quickly to go over that, is it something that we need to carry in the next agenda, or is it something that is done? Light client, if you can let us know about it.
Well, so someone's gonna reach out to the Aircon guys and tell them that that they need to put in content so we can discourage squatting.
I'm doing that right now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so I just wanted to quickly check if this the next item should be on the agenda for the next meeting, EIP triaging permission, or is it something that we can remove now? I think we made good progress last meeting.
Well, we don't. Is light client in the list and have permissions to do it?
I don't think I am at the moment.
Yeah, so we're not done yet.
Okay. So we could not even touch comments on that, and I know we are running out of time. So I'm gonna move the items which we could not touch to, this meeting to next meeting. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you all guys have a good day, night, evening. See you all in next 2 weeks on October 21st. Thank you everyone for joining.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Pooja. Bye.